It's a very different podcast this week. Catch up on our live podcast collab with Simon Peters from the WNBL Pulse as we talk about the stories, expectations and speculation swirling around WNBL 2.0. The new owners officially took over the league on the 2nd of April in a move that's got high expectations from all WNBL fans, but already seems to have encountered some questions from the clubs. It's a pretty wide-ranging conversation that we hope will start conversations amongst the fans of the league.
Why Michelle and I started UC Caps Weekly was that people knew that we were fairly heavily involved, and we would run into people all winter who would ask us questions about what's Natty Hurst doing in the off season, what's Kelsey Griffin doing, and what's Tolo doing, how's she doing over in Europe, and there's just not that information flow from clubs and from the league, and a lot of what we've done has sort of grown out of necessity and a desire for people to have more information and to be able to follow the players that they like or the club year round, not just sort of have it go to sleep for 8 months a year. And it's definitely something I think we'll chat more about when we talk about the new league. It's something that really needs to happen. I think they need to look at some homegrown media and really either do it themselves or to support people like yourself and like us that are actually doing it out of our passion for the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it is just on 7 o'clock. We are, it's our live time. And
Woo!
I think it's time for us to get right into the discussion for the night. Which is all the news that's been going on with the WNBL. A lot of it's been behind a paywall, so potentially a lot of fans may not be aware of it. Some of it's really interesting to be able to talk about because there's all sorts of interesting stories that have come out. But I actually want to start this off by saying, I realised when I was going through and doing my research over the last few years, it's kind of like every April there's been a story about the WNBL about, I'm actually looking at the headline back in April 2023. It was saying the future of the WNBL is in doubt as owners clash with Basketball Australia. And then, in May 2024, WNBL unification becomes a big step. So there's always been around this time. And, I suppose when I was doing this research, I was thinking, wow, am I actually going to end up having a year where we don't have one of these stories before we get into it? No, we've got them, but I think the thing that's interesting about these ones is those two stories were not great. They were doom and gloom. There was, is the league going to be? These ones now are, yes, the league is progressing, the new league from the takeover date of the 2nd of April, and I'm guessing that date was chosen because they didn't want to pick it for the 1st of April.
No, that wouldn't have been cool.
No,
but you're right. It's almost every year. I mean, wow, for probably the last 10 or so years, every couple of years there always seems to be a question of whether Perth will stay in the league and the license changing hand at Adelaide, and the shock of Melbourne Boomers just packing up shop and that license going to Geelong. I mean, I guess it makes sense. April is the end of the league, the end of the season, and that's when people, I guess, are making those D-Day decisions about the future of clubs. But it's certainly the time where we all sort of keep our ear to the ground and go, oh, what's coming up now?
So, first of all, I want to talk about, there seems to have been in these stories a lot of back and forth about the clubs.
Yeah.
And their position with the new league, and there was, some of the clubs were going to meet with BA for what they called 11th hour crisis
meetings.
Crisis meetings. And if I look at some of the issues that they raised in relation to this, they seem to be what you'd call contractual issues that ordinarily you'd think would have been sorted out beforehand. One of the ones that really struck me, and and I'm not sure if this is one of the ones that kind of sticks out for you, but there was a requirement to hand over some elements of intellectual property, like the team names, the colour of the logos, to the league.
Yep.
Now, okay, and I may upset a few people here by saying this, but I'm not aware of any, significant professional league that doesn't either they own everything. So, for example, the NBL,
yep,
they own the trademarks to the teams, the logos, the names. And in other leagues, it's between the clubs and the league themselves. They set up an entity that manages all the intellectual property rights.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of got me curious, and I wanted to go and have a look. So I spent a little bit of time searching through IP Australia, and it's really interesting. Some of the teams are trademarked, others are not.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to name teams here. I'm just not going to do it.
A name is shame.
No, I'm not going to do that. And there was one that was lodged literally on the 2nd of April, so on Wednesday, takeover day.
Wow.
That kind of is interesting because you'd think that this would be one of the easy ones to get around because, look, let's be honest. The NBL's been really good at marketing their league and marketing the teams. So that one kind of surprises me. I don't know about what you think on that one.
Yeah, look, they touched on a number of things that some of the clubs had as a sort of sticking point, and there was that requirement to hand over some of the intellectual property stuff that you just spoke to. One of them was a requirement to cede advertising control on some of the court and LED signing, which I anticipate would be full league-wide sponsorships, which to me is a no-brainer. It's like, if you're not expecting that, then why not? Yeah. Some of it was around the amount of money that each club is apparently going to get. But look, I don't know. I think it all goes back to it's something we've talked about a little bit on the Pulse this year about, we have a world-class product on the court.
Yep.
But our league is incredibly amateurish. And it's, I preface that by saying there's definitely a scale of from the clubs between which club might be at that pro level and which club is really at that almost, old school association level where you haven't really got business nous in the mix and things like that. But it's surprising because I would imagine that a lot of these requirements have been sent out to clubs for a while.
Yeah.
I would really hope that it wasn't dropped on them at the beginning of March or something. But a lot of it seems fairly stock standard. I'm no business expert by any stretch of the imagination, but I would expect that I would be handing a lot of that stuff over to the league so that they take on that marketing role.
Yeah.
And this has always been a thing that a lot of clubs have not complained about, but have said, we just don't have the resources to be able to market and, get out there and advertise our games and all that sort of stuff. And it seems to be something that historically they've turned to the league for anyway. Mm. So, yeah, it was interesting. There were three of the teams that were named in that article in Code Sports.
Yeah.
Were Canberra, Geelong and Townsville. I mean, full disclosure, I'm fairly close to the UC Caps and the organisation. I'm not overly surprised by that one because they've just had a change in leadership.
Yeah.
So Lucille Bailey is no longer the GM and Christy Collier-Hill has come in. So that one didn't surprise me a lot because, just making assumptions, I'm not sure how quickly the handover happened or all that sort of stuff. So you could forgive some stuff for falling through the cracks there, I guess is what I'm saying. Geelong too, I think they're very new to the league. It's only the end of their first season. Yep. And I really feel for those guys because they've gone, let's put in a WNBL club. And I think they've done a really great job in this opening season of promoting their social media stuff is top tier.
Yeah,
they've done a really, really good job. And then all of a sudden they're going to have to make another big jump in the level of presentation and just stepping up into the big league again. Because, from my understanding, they've gone from an organisation that's run a very successful program at the NBL 1 level.
Yep.
into the WNBL, and then a season later, bang, they got to step up again into this new WNBL. So that didn't surprise me either. Townsville's an interesting one too, but I guess they're also run very differently from any club in the country, and that community ownership model that they have. So yeah, I guess, surprised and not surprised as well. But interesting, another little April special.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you were running through that. I mean, obviously, advertising control of some court and LED signage, like you said, this should not be a surprise to anybody.
No.
Okay, the NBL does it for their own league.
Yep.
And so, therefore, I'd be looking at it going, well, sure, The question I'd be asking is, okay, if we're ceding advertising control, what's the split?
Yeah.
And that's
the thing. We know none of the details about any of this stuff that we talked before we went live. We were chatting about communication.
Yep.
And it's one of the things that we really would love to see accelerated big time from the league, from clubs, across the board. So we don't know a lot of detail about these requirements that the league is placing on clubs. And reading from this article, again, we're making assumptions around a lot of this stuff, but they're talking about the level of funding from the league. If the league is kicking $300K every season to the clubs, is that part of your compensation for giving up some of these sponsorship opportunities or, elements like that? I mean, that's certainly a brand new thing that I'm pretty certain the WNBL has never handed out money to clubs.
Oh, no, absolutely not. But one of the things, talking about that $300,000, that one's interesting because, again, I'm going to go back to one of these articles from years gone by where, it was stated that the clubs lost $5 million. I think it was in the 2023, the season in 2023.
Yeah, across a number of clubs. Yeah,
$5 million across all 8 clubs. Now, that breaks out to $675,000 per.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in one of the other articles,
if it was that even,
well, it wasn't because one of the other articles said, Southside lost $1 million.
Yep,
and Adelaide had lost.
I know where that went.
Oh yeah, and Adelaide lost 750,000. Right. So,
yeah. Right.
But even if we go back to, let's say it's even across the board, that's 675,000 per team.
Mm-hmm.
Now, $300,000 is halves your loss immediately. Yeah. And look, I'm sure everybody wants to not have to carry a loss, but look, this new league is not going to be the same old party with someone else's money.
No.
We can all be very clear on the fact that Larry Kesselman and the Denhams, Robin Denham, are astute business people.
Yeah.
Look, honestly, it's pretty obvious that Larry's put his hand in his pocket for a significant amount of coin over the years to build the NBL up to what it is today.
Yep.
Right. No two ways about that. He's doing it because he believes in the product. He's doing it because he has turned it around and it is improving. Okay. Yep. So therefore, I mean, it's not going to happen overnight. And certainly, and look, I'd even question if they turn around and said, yeah, listen, WNBL 2.0, we're actually going to hand over enough money so you're at break even from the start. I'd actually be questioning the wisdom of that decision.
Absolutely.
I think both you and I and people listening are fully aware that some clubs spend money like drunken sailors.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yep.
To get that roster, to get that win. And we all understand that, okay? I mean, I'm pretty sure that if either you or I were in a position where we owned a team,
hell yeah,
we'd be doing it as well. Okay? But there's a really simple solution to losing that much money. Spend less.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. And there's the counter argument, if you don't have the big stars, you don't get the audience and so on. But I'd counter that by saying, look at Canberra. And I know Canberra's a unique market. But even in that season where, the Caps were just getting pummeled.
Yep.
We came down to a couple of games. Those crowds were big.
Yeah.
And they were into it. There's no two ways about it. So there's more than just, you've got to have big names. You've got to engage with your community. You've got to build with your community.
That's right. I think Canberra's lucky in a way because whilst other areas in the country teams might be being fed, like information-wise, from various basketball associations. Like in Melbourne, there's 12, 13 basketball associations, probably more, that are all competing against each other, and they're all, there's these hundreds of thousands of people running around playing basketball. Canberra has a really good opportunity in that we have one basketball association here in Canberra. It's very easy to communicate with a captured audience of basketball players and fans. And I think part of that, having been in that association and around that association for the last 30 years, I recognise 90% of the people that come to Caps games through basketball. It's really a success story of the grassroots of basketball supporters in Canberra coming and supporting their national team. I think it kind of helps too that sadly the Canberra Cannons NBL team went under. That was early 2000s when that happened.
Yeah.
So the Capitals are the only National League basketball team here in Canberra. So we're lucky that we have that support, and it's very, very loyal. As you mentioned, outside of Jade Melbourne, for the last couple of years, we haven't had any big names at all, really. And the crowds just keep showing up to a season where we only won 2 games.
Yeah.
We were still getting 1,500 to 2,000 people at the NCCC every game. So, I wonder sometimes whether it's harder in other jurisdictions where that, I guess, your audience is spread a lot more thin, and it might be more difficult for clubs to sort of attract that attention. But to me, that's where it's got to come from. It's got to come from your grassroots stuff.
Yeah, and I think I get the tension between professional and the associations, but there's got to be more of I think there's got to be some better connection between them, particularly in the larger centres.
Yeah.
Because I've seen it up here in Sydney. The loyalty that people show to their associations is amazing.
Yeah.
And your WNBL clubs have to somehow find a way to tap into that and build up that same level of connection with the fans. And I'm not saying it's easy, but I think that's one of the things that should be a focus for WNBL 2.0 is finding a way to connect with the fans in a way where not only is it fans who aren't parts of associations, because you get a lot of them, but you really want to get the associations showing up, because that's going to bring you a lot of people. Now, I think traditionally there's been a bit of tension. Well, certainly in Sydney, there's loyalties, and look, let's face it, basketball, like anything else that's organised in a federated manner, there's, let's just say, personality issues,
politicking.
Yeah, and I think that gets in the way. It gets in the way, and so there's got to be some sort of outreach to be able to address that.
Yeah.
But on top of that, and this is something that's touched on in these articles, is, and I'm kind of hoping we can spend a little bit of time talking about this, is around TV and media. Because, look, let's be honest, last season's coverage was subpar.
Ordinary at best.
Yeah. And again, the WNBL was being run on a smell of an oily rag.
Yep.
Cost of production is high. I mean, there's a lot of people that go into producing live sports.
Yeah.
A lot of technology.
And it's something they really had to hand off.
Yeah.
To people that apparently knew what they were doing, but I think they might have got sold a Mickey there. But it's surprising. One of my little side gigs that I am very fortunate to do is commentating for the NBL 1 East for the Centre of Excellence.
Yep.
Men's and women's teams here at the AIS. And when you see the video production that is put out by the NBL 1 East through a couple of guys on a camera and the all the sort of graphics and overlay stuff done somewhere else, is far more superior than what the WNBL was able to produce last year. And so the ability's there and the technology's there and the know-how is there. I think it's just one of those things where, again, we always say that they just don't have the people and the bodies to be able to follow it up. But, that's one of the things I'm really looking forward to, is that level of broadcast really stepping up. And it's not, to me, it's not overly about money. It's just about getting the right people and the right, even getting the right people on the mic, people that know the game, that know the players.
Yep.
One of the things we often used to gripe a little bit about on the Pulse this year is occasionally you've got commentators on games and it's apparent they do not know the players in certain teams, certainly any of their bench players or anything. So,
yeah,
that's a really small thing that you could change straight away by getting people involved that are intimate with whatever team it is, their home team or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a million things we could improve on.
Get their names correct. That's a big one. But look, going back to what you were saying about NBL One East and the production for COE, there are people out there who know we used to do the live streams for the Flames out of Bryden Stadium when they were owned by Sydney Uni, and our feeds were taken by Fox Sports Australia and KO.
Yeah,
and they had standards. They were like, if you don't meet these standards, you don't get on. And I think at one point there was only 3 teams that they were taking, which was Sydney, Adelaide, and the Boomers. And the Boomers was being done by Deakin University's media department.
Yeah, very handy.
Yeah, very handy. So I look at it and I think that's really important. But there's things that go with that. I mean, the league is going to be expecting some sort of rights money.
Yeah.
For it, but here's where the last couple of years are going to play on that. How much rights money are they going to be able to get? Because if you want to up the production values, there's going to be an increase in production cost.
Yeah.
If you're going to go to a streaming, when I say streaming platform, I'm talking, the 9 Nows, etc. There are issues, and it's interesting because I did a bit of a straw poll over last year where I was asking people, what do you think about them? They didn't like. They said, we wish we were on like real TV, so Channel 9, 7, etc. Now, unfortunately, the WNBL doesn't bring the eyeballs that is going to be able to get you into there, because that's where they're picking up their big advertising revenues from.
Yeah.
But when I asked the question about, why do you want to be on real TV, it was like, because you push the remote control button and you're straight at the game. You don't have to go to 9 Now and go trolling through the menu to get to the live events and then try to figure out where it is. Yeah, and it's automatically creating a barrier to you being able to watch what you want to see.
Yeah. You're making it difficult.
Yeah, but that's what people, and I got that. It took some questions, but that was fundamentally the answer I was getting from quite a few people. It's that whole navigation to get to what you want to see compared to I turn on Channel 9 and there it is. So there's something interesting in that.
The NBL One does it through their website. So you go to the game center for that game. There's a big screen saying click on here. You've got to sign up to NBL One. That's free, but you've got to put in your password and stuff like that, and then you can watch the game. You can broadcast it on, you can put it on a smart TV through a web browser, or I don't think you can cast from your phone on those broadcasts through TV, but still, it's certainly easy to find because you just go to the and when you're talking about NBL One per division, there could be 12, 10, 12 games on a day.
Yeah.
You go in, find your game, click on that, and there it is right in front of you. You just go, bang, start, let's go. Yeah, definitely. I mean, we're kind of pulling hairs here as well, but it's fantastic that we've been able to watch every single game for the last couple of seasons, which is great. I mean, I loathe the 9 Now app. I think it's awful that I've got to search every time I go back. I can't save it as a favorite. I've got to dig out and use the dodgy remote control keyboard pad and stuff. But hey, it's there, which is fantastic.
Look, and I'm not taking that away. It is there. But I think here's the other thing, though. This is, again, another piece of tension. You've got 9 Now and apps like that with the weird navigation, or do you go behind a paywall to a KO or, Fox Sports or someone like that? Now, and I haven't looked at numbers for a while. The last time I looked at numbers, Foxtel /KO covered 17.5% of the Australian population or something like that. So let's bump it up. Let's call it 20%.
Yeah.
Even be generous, 25%. you're still cutting 75% of your potential audience out of the loop.
Oh, so definitely.
One of the things and you know, I feel sorry a bit for WNBL 2.0 is it's April. It's not that far till October and tip off.
Yep.
And they've got to negotiate a broadcast deal.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure they've been working on it, but they've got to get that locked in, try and get some rights money out of it, manage the production costs associated with it, get a game package on the screen that's good for the fans to be able to watch and better quality than some of the stuff that happened last year.
Yeah.
That's a really tight time frame to be able to deliver something like that. And I mean, I know that, you know, having spoken to Jenny Sager, that, you know, she comes from that background, so she does understand it, which is great. But the other part that comes into it is there's been a bit of a seismic shift with ESPN just over the last 4 weeks, because ESPN is no longer unique to Foxtel and KO. It's now available on Disney Plus.
I did not know that.
Yeah, just over the last few weeks, they've become available.
I knew they were the same company.
Yeah.
Because when you do your March Madness tournament brackets, you've got to go through the Disney bloody paywall. But yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
So again, that starts to make me wonder, because as soon as you go to a streamer, what's that doing to the rest of your market? And bringing this back around to the WNBL, this change happening in the league is happening at a time when things are changing significantly in the broadcast space, as we've just talked about just there. Mm-hmm. And you got to start wondering, what's the impact going to be in terms on costs and available audience? Because Disney Plus is cheaper than a subscription to KO.
Yep,
by a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But how many people have got it? How many of those people are going to be WNBL fans? There's a lot of moving pieces there, and I'm sure that, you know, clubs also, they used to hear, you know, they'd hear more in their commission meetings about what was going on. It's potentially that there's going to be stuff that they're just not going to be hearing about anymore because the structure of the organisation's changed. You know, we've gone from being whatever it was to a business. And as I often say to people in the commercial world, there are decisions that are made on a daily basis that have a direct impact on you that you may not know about until it's done. And that kind of leads me into that whole issue that came up again in those articles about the CBA. Apparently a CBA has been negotiated. Yeah,
that was surprising. I knew it was coming up, and I know that, you know, from talking to one or two coaches, their whole kind of recruitment kickoff is waiting for the CBA to be signed and done.
Yep.
But no announcement at all about that being done is just odd.
Well, look, to be honest, I kind of expected something like that to happen because, and I'll tell you why, because negotiating the CBA takes forever.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And how many times have we seen free agency delayed because CBA was taking forever to get agreed to?
Yep.
We knew
pretty much every time there's an agreement.
Yeah. We knew last year, new ownership.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be surprised if they started negotiating at that point where the heads of agreement was signed with BA that, yes, we are going to take over. Yes, we're going to take over at a certain date. All of that stuff. Once that was done, I wouldn't have been surprised if they were sitting there talking with the ABPA about sorting out a CBA, getting it locked in so that straight away they can start doing, like any good business does, their budgeting and starting to figure out what's it all going to cost. Now,
I would hope so.
Should the clubs have been involved in that? Okay, I'm going to line myself up for another belting about the head. And the short answer to that is no. And I'll give you my reasons why. Clubs tend to want to negotiate the CBA down.
Mm-hmm.
And it's understandable because they've got limited budgets. They don't want to be losing more money. They've got all that going on. On the other hand, you've got a brand new league that's setting itself up. They've got what is arguably one of the top 3 leagues in the world.
Mm-hmm.
You want to be able to put a level of payment in that's going to keep the players here in Australia. I disagree with the article where it was like, oh, because they're not getting paid as much, a lot of players went over to Europe. That's a little bit simplistic in my opinion, and the reason is a lot of those players who went to Europe are people who are in Opal's contention,
Mm-hmm.
and you want to have some international experience under your belt.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we've got to make these changes, and we've got to start treating the league like a real business. And I think this is one of these really weird situations where the club owners who have been agitating for years for a more professional league, for a more business-like league, have got what they asked for and realised, oh, all this other stuff actually applies to us as well.
Yeah.
And they're kind of a little bit shocked by it.
Yep, I would 100% agree. And it's, we talked about when I was chatting with Mary the other day about what we're going to call this thing tonight. It's it really, you nailed it on the head. This is something that's been talked about as long as I've been involved, so at least 25 years. Now we want to be more professional. We want our players to get paid. It's not just about some fairy godmother, fairy godfather throwing a bag of money at you and go and have at it. Like, everyone has to step up. Like, yep. There's no denying at all that our players should be paid more. But where does that money come from? And the clubs have to step up. They've got to, and what you said also, it has to be a business now. You're running an organization that, is dealing in millions and millions of dollars.
Yes.
It's not like you're going down to Bunnings and doing a sausage sizzle to try to make ends meet for your local club. This is a $1 million business. As far as I can tell, with the exception of maybe one or two clubs recently, it's not run that way by Clubland. It's still run at a very amateurish level. We talk about sponsorships and things like that. How many business minds are clubs engaging with or hiring on to do that fundraising and that sponsorship? I guess, getting sponsors and then retaining them as well. Mm. It's not the sort of thing you can just get someone who you used to play with back in the day to come and sit in the front office and go out and do that work. It's specific work. It's really hard, I would imagine. It'd be hard in any level, but in certainly in Sydney and Melbourne, where you've got massive markets competing for so much opportunity there to try to get money for your club. You need professionals that know what they're doing in this thing, not someone that, it's time to walk the walk.
Yeah.
We've talked the talk for years and years and years. Now it's time to go, okay, we've got a golden opportunity here. We have to up the ante with regard to our club and what we do, the way we treat players, the way we treat our coaches, the way we treat sponsors and our fan base as well. It's an across-the-board thing, and it's not just a matter of giving players more money.
No, I suppose, and I mean, I've been looking at it for the last 13, 14 years. Mm-hmm. The clubs tend to, they're not really run with a professional front office. And it's not, and this is not a criticism of the clubs, it's just the way everything evolved.
Yeah, it's just the way it's been for 45 years.
Yeah, but now, with the ownership that's stepped in, the efforts that they are putting in, I've heard people talking about it, I've seen some of the directions that they've been talking about. I mean, all you have to do is look at how Sydney's been run and what's happened at the Flames just over the last 2-3 years. You're getting an inkling of what's going on. You can't have a foot in each camp. You can't say, not
anymore.
Yeah, we are a business now. Yep. We have to be a business. We recently did a pod with Sandy Brondello. She talked about the ownership of the New York Liberty, the effort that they've put in, the direction that they've taken things, the way that they're engaging with their fans. My co-host on that one, Alf Corriette, was saying that, confirming what Sandy was saying, that they had 100 people in their post-game media press conferences. Okay?
Wow.
Sometimes, at WNBL games, we don't have anybody showing up.
Yeah.
And yes, that's going to change over time. It has to change over time.
Mm-hmm.
But the clubs have to start building up relationships with the media. And when I say the media, it's not just, News Corp and Channel 9 and Channel 10.
Harry Stokes' mob.
Yeah. You've got to actually build relationships with the non-traditional media, because I honestly believe that if you aggregated all the audience that all the non-traditional media have, they're going to outstrip the traditional media audience.
Totally. And that's the way the world has changed too.
Yep.
People want specific information about certain things. They do not turn on the TV.
No.
They go to the net. They find, networks of people. They find podcasts like the ones that you and I are involved in. They find people that are on the ground that know what they're talking about. And that's where they get the information. That's where they get the insight from. I mean, it's just a reality. The WNBL is not going to be on Wide World of Sports every weekend.
Yeah.
Not at the moment, that's for sure. And it's that competition. There are so many well-run leagues and sports that have got marketing people and professional media people attached to it. They're always going to get that lion's share of the free media and I guess the mainstream media. Clubs need to be looking at leveraging, Instagram, YouTube, whatever else is out there, podcasts, things like that.
Yeah.
And there's a number of them throughout the country. And I know for a fact from talking with nearly all of them that they don't get supported by clubs.
Nope.
Like they're just not interested. And that's what I mean about they're going to have to step up. It's like sponsors that want to get involved, but make phone calls and the return phone call never comes.
Okay.
They never get called back. And
very true.
I could go on the stories I've heard and talk to people and it's, and across the entire league, it's really disheartening.
I could give you some firsthand.
That's one area in particular where every club has got to step up.
Yeah.
My biggest fear in this whole thing is that we get this fantastic opportunity, and I'm not thinking this is a magic bullet for the league and that everything's going to be rosy after it already is after April 2nd. But, it's everybody's got to step up.
Yeah.
Not just and that we can't, I'm really worried that people will sit back and go, well, this is great. All this money's in the league now. They've got all this staff and they'll take care of everything. We can just sit back and run our team.
It's like you said earlier on, Geelong has done a great job with engaging with everybody.
Yep.
We know that certainly from our perspective, the Flames definitely do.
The improvement in the Flames since the Denims have come on board is it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Amazing. And everybody's noticed.
And
it's been really great.
And I'd like to, if any clubs are listening to this and you want to know what you got to do, I'm going to give two examples here. First of all, watch what some of the WNBA clubs do. So recently I jumped onto one of the media calls that the LA Sparks did. Well, actually, I jumped on two of them, but they did one with the Flames players that were signing up.
Shanice, yeah.
Yeah, and looking at all the media that was there.
Mm-hmm.
I was there from Australia. There were three or four different reporters from News Limited.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone else was from the US, which surprised me because I thought there might be more Australians jumping on for that one.
Yep.
And of the ones that they had there, they were all non-traditional media.
Yep.
So News Limited were the only traditional media ones, and they were like Australian locals. And I'll say this, the Sparks are really responsive. You send an email, they'll get back to you. Guys, This is what you got to do.
Yep.
You cannot kind of try and hold people at a distance. You got to let them in.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I want to point out is, again, and this is a podcast we've had on before, Justin Nelson, who left the Boomers, went over to New Zealand, literally transformed basketball in New Zealand, and he's coming back. He keeps saying the one thing over and over again, and this is what you can't pay lip service to this, engage your fans. Make your fans welcome. Make them your number one priority, because the truth is, without the fans, you don't have a club.
Well, we've paid for the league over the past 45 years.
Yeah.
Because there really hasn't been that big corporate influx of money and what we're looking forward to happening as we move forward. And the fans are everything. They're certainly, they're paying for tickets, 2,000 people coming through the door every home game.
Yep.
They're the people you've got to, and again, it's that information stuff. It's why podcasts like ours have sort of sprung up out of necessity because the clubs traditionally just do not do a good job of engaging with those fans.
No. And I think this is the other thing I think it's really important is we've got two different facets that we're dealing with now. You've got the corporate WNBL, who, and I've said it before, I'm not scared to say it again, I think they've got the most unenviable job in Australian sport right now, because you've got this huge pool of WNBL fans who know, as you've said, rightly, how good a product we've got. And they are champing at the bit to have it show up out there like they want it to.
Yep.
But the reality is it's going to take time to get there. And it's important for all the fans to understand that there's a long journey here. This isn't, by next season everything's going to be great and dandy.
No.
This is going to be a 3 to 5 year journey. I mean, it's taken Larry, 10 years to get the NBL to where it is now.
Yeah. Yep.
And it's still got a ways to go. So I suppose one of the things that I kind of get annoyed about with these articles is they do throw things out. There's a bit of a negative spin to it. And yeah, I get it. Look, that's the playbook, but it's not really kind of helping. What it does is for a lot of the fans who see this stuff, as you rightly said, oh, what's going on? What's the issue? What's happening? We've seen this headline. We can't get to it. It's behind a paywall. Can you tell us what's happening? The headline's done its job, but it's not really the right job.
Yeah, because a lot of it's up in the air. I mean, there was a lot to take in from that one article too. It was, the position of some of the clubs, the most, it was alarming. It wasn't a surprise, but it was alarming to know that, Adelaide, from all views, appear dead in the water.
Yeah.
Like they're talking in this article about them handing back their license at the beginning of May, and that, that they had two interested parties in taking over the license, but they both balked at the requirements that the league was asking. There's a lot of conjecture in it.
Yeah.
And, hey, again, it's good that we even got this, because if this article hadn't come out, we'd just be going, I wonder how it's going.
Yeah.
April 2's here. Woohoo. Good to know that, I mean, kind of in a roundabout way saying that the league will definitely be going ahead.
Yes.
That there'll be 8 teams.
Yep.
It may not be the 8 teams that we've just had in this past season. And, players know nothing about this.
Yeah.
We threw up our little story on WNBL Pulse's Instagram, and we had players reaching out to us going, What? What's going on? Are we going to have a league next year? And that again is, that comes back to the entire professionalism that clubs need to be really getting around and communicating. It's almost like it's like you hear those stories about people being fired, and they find out when they turn on the news at 6:00 at night and realise that their company's gone under and everyone's been sacked, and they're like, "What?" We've got to be better across the board with everything. Players at clubs who were balking at this had no idea what was going on. Yeah, it's hard. I know you're in exactly the same boat, because we've both been passionate members of this community for so long, and we just want it to get better.
Yes.
And we've heard the talk for, in my case, 25 years. Everyone wants this. This is what needs to happen. This is what we need. We need to keep our girls here in Australia. We need good salaries. But from the outside looking in, you're not seeing anyone taking those steps to make those things happen.
No.
And it's frustrating for us. It's frustrating for fans. It's frustrating for players.
Yep.
I'm sure you're in the same boat with the people you talk to. We talk with players, and some of the stories you hear are not good. They're really disappointing, and we've got a lot to do to move forward. But I just think this is such a golden opportunity, and it's like you said, everyone's been asking for it for so long, and now here it is. And it's a little scary to know that some of the clubs just aren't ready.
Yeah, it shocks me. And I think, like I said before, I think there was a little bit of that, deep-pocketed rescuers are going to show up and all our problems will be solved and we can continue on our way.
That's my biggest fear.
Yeah, obviously one of the biggest things for me is, the fact that the Caps have hired Christy Collier-Hill.
Oh, so happy about that. When we heard that news, we were like, yes, that is, after every time Jade signs for another year or two, that is the second best news we've had in a very, very long time. And so that was very exciting.
Yeah, and look, the job that Christy has done with the WNBL over the last few years, given all the constraints that she had in terms of resourcing, finance, etc.
Yep.
She's done a spectacular job.
Amazing.
And, that's the level of professionalism that the clubs need to be able to turn around. Now, I can say comfortably, I think Townsville have got a very good team up there running there. We've had them on the pod. We've talked to them. They're really switched on people. They know what they're doing and they understand their community. And being a community-owned club, that's really important.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that as you mentioned, is like, we don't know what's going to happen with Adelaide, but I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, well, if no one in Adelaide is going to step up to support the club, given this new change, because look, I'm sure, again, going back to the fact that Larry and Robin are business people.
Yeah.
Somebody comes up and says, listen, I want to buy the club. I want to meet all your requirements.
Mm-hmm.
Financially, we can do this. And we're going to need assistance for our first 1 or 2 years. And here's the business plan that we've got that says this is how we want to be able to build the club, build it as a business, attract fans, attract sponsors, etc. Let's sit down and figure out what we can do.
Yeah.
I'm sure they're going to get a meeting and they're going to sit down around a table and they're going to have a discussion about it. I don't know what the outcome would be.
Yeah.
But you got to go and approach it in that professional manner. You can't just go, oh, well, I'm not really thrilled by what we've got to do for the game day. Well, sorry, but it's a whole new league.
Yeah. And I can't imagine any of that stuff, that game day stuff is going to be too onerous or that much more than what most of the clubs are doing now already.
I doubt it. If anybody's listening from WNBL 2.0, I'm going to put my hand up and say, for all those stadiums that have, I'll say, average and below average refreshments and food, getting a whole bunch of food trucks out the front with music, and this is a real bugbear of mine.
Yep.
You'll be able to get it. They do it down at Albury. We went to Albury for an NBL 1 game last season.
Yep. And
they had 2 games, one on a Friday night, one on a Saturday night. We went to both games. Different food trucks out front. People were still buying inside. Yeah. But people were going out to the food trucks. They had coffee. They had different types of food. There was some music playing outside, so people would come in a bit earlier, have something to eat. It was an event. Clubs, this is what you need to do. Yep. This gets people through the door. You are in the sports entertainment business.
Yep.
And I know there are people out there who get it, who are in the clubs who do get it. It's just got to happen now. And this is the perfect opportunity. And I know that, like you said, there's a bit of a shock at, we've got what we asked for and there's minimum standards we need to hit. Well, anybody who's surprised by that, I'm sorry, you should not be surprised.
Possibly in the wrong job.
Yeah. I wasn't quite going to go there, but now that you've said it. Yeah. Now, as we wrap this up, because we're getting close to time, I just want to say, first of all, thanks a lot, Simon, for joining us on this
Anytime.
pod. And I also want to say, I'm looking forward, I see it as a really big opportunity for the league and for the sport. I have absolutely no doubt that, both the owners, Larry and the NBL and the Denims and Wallamai Capital Group have the best interests of the sport at heart. Yes, they are going to want to make money out of it. And there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
Okay. And so, and I'm saying that for anybody who's kind of going to do that, because, you see some of the comments about Larry with the NBL, he's making all this money, it's this, it's that, it's not transparent. It's like, he's built it up. He's put his money on the table and he's done it. They're going to do the same with the WNBL and more power to them.
Yep. I am a little disappointed that we're 2 days into the WNBL 2.0 and we've got the same old website. I had, in the back of my mind, I was going, we're going to have a cool new website. There's going to be lots of information. It's going to be great. And I can buy my Bendigo Champs merchandise. But there is yeah, still same old website.
Yeah.
Hopefully that's something that pops up soon.
I'm sure it'll change. When I look at what's just all these items in the article, plus all the other things that I know would be happening out there.
Yeah.
These guys are busier than one-armed wallpaper hangers at the moment.
Hope so.
I'm sure they are.
I mean, seeing the all the ads that went out last year for positions in the new WNBL, and it was something like 12 or 13 full-time positions.
Yep.
That is so exciting.
It is.
To think that there's going to be that many people working on our new league.
Yep.
Yeah, that's really encouraging.
All right. Simon, thanks so much for your time. It's been great
My pleasure.
To you.
Great talking to you.
It'd probably be good for us to kind of loop back on this one.
Yeah, I think we should make this maybe a monthly update or something while the new
idea.
While the new league rolls into its
actually we could,
new incarnation.
Yeah, okay. I'll tell you what. Maybe we can just sort of set a regular date, and that way everybody knows they can come and get it and listen to it as a live pod.
Yeah, we've had a couple of weeks off with since the end of the finals. And, we've all sort of gone on Hawaiian holidays and things like that. No, I wish
we have.
No, we have not. But we're about to start firing up our Hoops and Dreams series, which we've planned to do over the off season, where we're talking to some luminaries and coaches and players and administrators about their hopes and dreams for this new league. So we've pumped out one with Larissa Anderson sort of toward the end of the season, and we've got about 6 or 7 lined up over the next couple of weeks. So
that's good.
We're really just trying to get that, almost create a wish list from every aspect of the league and ex-players, current players. We've talked with Bonnie Dees in Sydney, and we've got an agreement to have a chat with Christy Collier-Hill. So we're going to start pushing that over the winter months. But I think, we should definitely catch up.
Yeah.
And keep them honest.
We've got a couple of interesting ones coming up in the not too distant future, including some players who've got some really interesting perspectives on not only the current state, but also, what they're thinking about for the future. The other thing that we're really sort of excited about is our ability to branching out and developing more talent to be able to work on some of these podcasts. So this is where it's really important for us to be able to do some of these collaborations, because it's important, I think, for all of us to work together to try and help to build the league up itself.
Yep, definitely.
Thanks, Simon. We'll talk soon.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you get our latest pod. And we really appreciate if we could get a like and a review so we can extend the reach to more listeners. And don't forget, follow us on Instagram, Twitter and LinkedIn.